Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turtlecast. You're here with myself, Jason, and our special guest, the CEO of MS Money Moves, Zion Miller. Now, we brought Zion on because Zion runs a specialized firm that deals a lot with data, especially around pharmaceuticals, biopharmaceuticals, and then driving those non-dogmatic, agnostic data insights into research that allows people to receive maximum gain on their financial investments in this very specialized part of the financial markets. So, Zion, thank you for joining us. And we'd love it if you could just kind of kick it off, get a little background about you, the firm, and where this leads into the data approach.
Thanks for that intro. That was spot on. So, a little background on myself. I got into trading stocks and investing in the market right when I turned 18. I was looking for a way to, self-fund my higher education. I really didn't want to fall victim to the crazy student debt crisis that's going on, and the market seemed like the most productive channel for me to do that. So, being maybe a little naive, perhaps, I took what money I had saved up over the summer, working doubles in a restaurant, and just YOLO'd, as they say, into the biotech industry because it presented the most favorable risk reward, scenario from my due diligence. And yeah, from there, luckily it worked out. Was able to really kind of navigate my way through the industry and learn a consistent method to really kind of forecast the efficacy and performance of a lot of these companies. So fast forward to now and working with a team of PhDs, PharmDs, really, really wise people in the space. And we're just working every day on doing our homework on these companies and producing the most objective, data driven insights to our subscribers around the world.
Oh, so you're telling me that when you go to look at investments or you go to write a report, you actually speak to an expert that legitimately knows what they're talking about rather than just going to Bloomberg to make a decision on what you should tell your
It's kind of a
customers.
combination of all of that. Something that I think is a huge error in the industry. The available insights to a lot of the retail investment community are reactive. You're getting information after the fact. Like with GameStop, it's like you're seeing what happened the day after, which doesn't matter. How do you take advantage of that? So we're going through and yeah, referring with, experts, getting their take, looking at physicians, patients, Bloomberg Terminal, all of these sources, and really kind of pulling all this data together into a quick digestible read for our subscribers so they can have that concise overview.
So now that quick digestible sense of what you're talking about here. So you're collecting data from many different
Yeah,
outlets,
yeah.
correct? And you're bringing them together, and do you take them and when you create that summary, do you put a bias to it to say that, this is probably something you should get into, or do you just leave it at the fact of saying, we've collected this data, we've written a report, this is what it has told us, now it's your choice to do what you want to do with it? What is typically that
Yeah, more
progression
so the
look like?
latter. It looks a lot like typical analyst reports. We'll kind of have like our buy rating and our kind of price target forecasts and all of that. But really, the meat of the report is going to be the fundamentals, really uncovering that story. Looking at, hey, here's what patients have been saying. Here's the story of how this company is undervalued and the data that supports this thesis.
That's interesting. So rather than just looking at we did a Carl Jung episode on just looking at the statistical nature of the company. That's not enough in your case. You're saying that by actually going to these primary source individuals, people within the company, people that use that specific drug, that have gone through the trial, by getting that information from them directly, tells a story that actually explains the data that is being seen or what the data that might be
Yeah,
missed.
absolutely. And that's really where a lot of people fall short and why the statistics are so terrible for a lot of newcomers to the industry. It's, there's no one size fits all to this. It's a combination of hundreds of factors, really. And you need to have the ability to get granular and get that information from, countless sources to really kind of piece together the story, which is why, a lot of analysts consistently have missed the plays like Tesla, the plays like, that Kathy Woods is being really famed for hitting on. A lot of these analysts just don't have access or are kind of naive to that information.
Yeah, I want to get into kind of a little macro view shift on this,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, Zion.
Jason's only worried about macros.
No, you talked about. I know you started investing when you were really young, and we see Robinhood, and you mentioned GameStop. Is this something? What are you seeing in this decentralized effort on investing? Is this something that you've been following? Have you been kind of? I mean, because I mean, you're in that age
Right.
demographic with Robinhood, so what are you seeing with that?
Yeah, it's awesome, but I think there's also a lot of kind of negative externalities, and relationships are being forged, which the community at large isn't always aware of. A perfect example of that being, order flow. A lot of, the commission-free trading has brought people like myself and millions of others into this industry. But what a lot of people don't realize is, where's the cost? Who's paying for that free trading? And I think it's really resulting in a lot of financial risk that people aren't really aware of when they're getting into these positions. Case in point being GameStop. When you have a broker that's similar to social media platforms selling your data on the back end to hedge funds, their fiduciary responsibility is automatically, not in line with their customer right there. So I think the whole movement's been good to kind of expose a lot of this, so we can hopefully move to a more productive price discovery and accurate market.
Yeah,
Well,
because that's why Robinhood stopped, right? Because they were that was what
yeah,
you
because
just
they're getting
mentioned.
just
Yeah.
clobbered.
Right.
They're like,
But yeah, but
"Shit, we could have it as a free trade. Yeah.
but the hedge fund peeps were, and I may be wrong, but the hedge fund peeps were buying data from Robinhood, right?
Well,
And
not,
so then this
it's
hits.
more than just
Yeah.
Robinhood. So get into the factor of what was going on these Reddit threads. And I forget what the other name of that company is that was selling individuals'
Right.
data regarding their stock
Yeah.
behavior. So can we get into that real quick and talk about essentially this entire story and the impact of an individual's emotional state and thought and how that was actually driving
Yeah,
that market?
so there's a couple components. You have, brokers like TD Ameritrade, Robinhood, they're selling your order flow and that data. So, they really understand your position, and they're deciding where your order gets executed and receiving financial compensation for that. Then you also have platforms like Reddit who are selling, this retail data, the information that they're producing, and you have more specialized platforms like StockTwits. And this platform, it's essentially Twitter for stocks. You can, post on,
Mhm.
the boards are stock oriented, and that pulls the sentiment from the retail community. And it was over half of StockTwit's revenue in the last fiscal year was developed solely from selling this retail data to hedge funds, which is pretty interesting because
And
Mm.
what was it, 12
I
something? What
think the
was
figure was
the
around 120 million.
120? There we go. I'm always dropping a
Yeah.
zero.
I,
Shame on me. So they had you as an individual, Jason, or Zion going onto StockTwits would be putting together your data and they're raking in fat profit off of selling your information.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're getting people to write articles, right?
They don't really have the article component as much. It's more so just producing the sentiment analysis. But it's really significant because everyone's aware of how Facebook is like selling your selfies and listening in on you to sell you some random
Mhm.
Amazon product. But the implications in the finance industry and the capital markets, I think, are a lot more devastating because it has serious financial implications. It's like, the retail community is inherently fighting this game with one hand behind their back. Hedge funds, understand the emotion of this entire community that's coming into the markets, and they know their order flow. They know, way more information than any of us as normal people have access to. It's just a very
So then they're taking that data and putting in their AI systems with
Bang.
machine learning.
And they have their computer traded algorithms like be done.
right.
That's
Mhm.
it. And they just suck it up all day long. And you'll pay for that price because on the back end for how this thing's trading, which is 85%, maybe 90% of the market trading is done by computers anyway. They don't have to worry about it. And it's executed with
Yeah.
precision. They're just analyzing what the market is doing and then sending it out there.
Yeah, because they're going to know. They're going to put Reddit in there, know the patterns.
But what's the key here that Zion had actually spoken about? And this is what we talked about in a previous episode, Zion, just recently, about, for instance, ESG
Right.
investing. Okay. there's a gap with that ESG investing because still there's so much information that is only allowed to a very select group that can
Exactly.
afford it. It's not truly democratizing that information. So that actually limits people's ability to get into the markets and make sound decisions with these investments. And then the people who have the information are still in control on
Yeah.
that function. So when I look at MS Money Moves, and if it's on pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical research, what you're doing is you're helping with the democratization of that specific part of the industry that is, albeit quite private and has been very private. And so when you open that up, what do you see as the benefit of democratizing that data and telling that truthful story and letting it out there to remove that, essentially that Cold War Iron Curtain that you would
Right.
find around people that actually have the inside when it comes to
Yeah, I
trading in the
think one of
markets?
the biggest benefits that I've witnessed so far is conviction. I think we're a little naive in, hearing all these buzzwords of democratization of finance and all of that, which is great, but a lot of platforms aren't actually doing it. They are democratizing in terms of access, but what we need to be driving is efficacious access. We need to get
There
people
we
that,
go.
we need younger people in the markets, but we need them fundamentally educated on what drives value and not just, YOLOing their stimulus check and how the money calls. That's fine, but you need to, at that point, you need to recognize that you're essentially gambling. And what we really want to do here is, you know, fundamentally change that story and enable people to really realize consistent benefit of this financial vehicle, because the current solutions don't really provide that.
Well, the market makers want you to gamble. They don't want you to have information. It's like they want you to go into the casino and not know the odds
Yeah, and they
distribution.
make money off that spread too.
It's their benefit, and they'll make money off of
Yeah.
both sides, right? It's a perfect Rothschild's equation. I use this all the time. Like if you think of the stock market as a civil war, you fund both
Yeah,
sides.
exactly. It's I mean, after, I think it was 2001, maybe 2004. I'll have to double check on that, but they changed from a fractional system to decimal for the spreads. And really what this opened up was, a lot less benefit for market makers because they make that money off both sides on the spread. And now with selling
Mhm.
order flows and just being incentivized through these brokers to, execute these orders, it's an inherently flawed system for us as consumers and people who are trying to participate. So ultimately, I think empowering
So
people with this objective information that is usually only available to people who have access to a Bloomberg terminal, people that are paying, the 30 grand a year or whatever for that subscription, really kind of democratizing the access to information, I think, is a key to true democratization of the industry.
How antiquated are those terminals? I
dude,
mean, the
I
information flowing through them, but I've messed around with them.
I used to
Even
trade
like
on
the
them.
numeric keep, yeah,
Yeah, it's a joke.
It's
And it looks like DOS's like prettier cousin.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's how
Trade
I
with
would.
lipstick on it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's exactly
but I
what
mean,
it is.
we're in 2021. It's
Yeah,
everything's
right.
decentralized.
and you want like, and if you want access to information, by the way, when you buy a Bloomberg terminal, that just means you get lagging indicators faster, if that makes any sense. So you've paid for lagging indicators faster, but if you're on the inside, then you have the leading indicator, right? Leading indicators are the key drivers for this. So when I look at things like MS Money Moves, the function of this is about leading indication. Because if you're a lagger, you're already losing and you can't really tell your resources where they need to go. You can only plan after the fact. So you have to take a loss first for hopefully a gain later. Am I
No,
off base
that's
on that,
that's spot
Zion?
on, and I think that kind of comes back to the point I brought up earlier of, all the information that we have available, that we have access to, that's affordable, is reactive, which is useless. Like CNBC telling me how Keith Gill squeezed Citadel out of 12 billion on GameStop's cool, but that doesn't really provide a whole lot of value to me for future plays. It doesn't help me forecast where that value is in the future. But things like Bloomberg Terminal do.
Yeah, the war story doesn't
Yeah,
help. There's already bloodshed that's happened. I actually want to prevent the bleeding from occurring.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
see what I
there's
mean?
there's very, very few objective tools available to common people to have access to that. I mean, Bloomberg Terminal does give you that forecast, you know, capability, but again, not very many people can afford that access.
So then let me ask you, you said effective tool. How would you define an effective tool? I'm not trying to lead you into a corner here or just like round up the I already know where the logic leads, so I'm just going to ask, what would you define as an effective tool?
Something that's objective, concise, and timely. I think those are really kind of the three pillars that are
Gosh,
important here.
that's really interesting. So if you look at the architecture of what you created with MS Money Moves, and you talk about that value, explain to me that sort of objective, detailed timeliness that you
Yeah,
speak
so
about.
a perfect example of that is BioCryst Pharmaceuticals, to get kind of specific on an example here. We started covering them back last March when the pandemic started. And what we really did here was, jumped into the company, covered the pipeline, and broke it down in layman's terms, talking about, HAE, PNH, really complex rare diseases that really only a couple thousand people know about. But they're insanely impactful to patients' lives, and they're huge markets. And typically, it's only really high salaried analysts that are looking at this information, which produces an immense amount of value. If you get that FDA approval, if you're helping these patients out, your your market cap's getting a nice boost as a result. But really, what we did here was go in, provide the education to try and really enable people to understand the implications of the medication they're bringing to market and why it would be efficacious and why it would provide a better quality of life to these patients. And really, this information is again guarded by tools like Bloomberg Terminal, where you can go in and you can see what the analysts are saying. Usually, you can't see that until about a month after, when the 13 Gs come out. So yeah, really kind of diving in there, getting granular, getting the source data being from patients and physicians, and really understanding the
That's
landscape.
what I'm talking. Don't get me amped up. I'm going to throw my laptop right now on screen. Let's consider this, both of you here in this room right now. If we talk about impactful investing, because you have leading indicators, granular, objective information, it then opens up the awareness towards people to be like, not only can I make money by investing in this firm, but it also affords me the ability to extend the end of life of these individuals that feel the impact of that firm, its technology, or biopharmaceutical drug that is actually created. So when I look at what you are doing, Zion, by stitching this source data together to tell this story, creates an impact far beyond, a 6,000% return you guys may advertise. I'm talking about a return on human life.
Yeah.
And for some people to say that that is a reach, I don't think at all. Because if you can afford the resources towards those firms that are actually trying to solve those problems, there's amazing good in the impact of that investment. And that's driven by that quality information right out of the gate. And if we think about a world where finance is limited because of that information gap, people are excluded from being a part of this market, it inhibits the ability for people to extend human life, for them to be a part of those investments.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And that's really one of my frustrations with the industry at large. It's like, the point of us investing is to help accelerate these companies that we need, that are going to drive the future of humanity. And that's not what's happening right now. ESG is kind of trying to make that push, but again, you have issues with what's the authenticity of this data? What do the metrics actually mean? And I mean, that's super present in biotech. There's, for every one company that's actually helping out patients, you have 10 that everyone's paying attention to because of the ways that our information systems work that are basically just scams. So, yeah, I think enabling people to really understand the fundamentals of this and not just have access to the data, but have the data be useful to them is really powerful, because, yeah, the end result is patients on PNH that are receiving BioCryst treatment don't have transfusions. That's huge. They don't, that quality of life is insane. On HAE, these patients are able to just now pop a pill instead of, stabbing themselves with a needle like the current standard of care, which is a huge change in quality of life. And a lot of times these are, life changing and life saving, solutions.
Stabbing ourselves with a needle is pretty much a metaphor for how we
Right.
do everything.
Well, I mean, you can even look at, what was that company, Thermos or whatever, where they scammed Theranos, and then it had the blood, Watson, that machine, that, and, I mean, she scammed a ton of people, generals, heads of state, so, I mean, understanding and looking at the data like that, I mean, it was just smoke and mirrors constantly. Is that what you're talking about when you're seeing some of these, like you said, 1 out of every
Yeah,
10?
yeah, totally. Because there's a lot of interest in the space because of, like Alex was saying, 6,000% returns aren't, it's uncommon, but it's not impossible in this industry. So it attracts a lot of people who, are attracted to the GameStop options and that exciting kind of volatility. But yeah, one of the unfortunate side effects of that is there's a lot of companies that pop up that really aren't driving any fundamental value for patients and are able to pay to go on Jim Cramer and pop up their market cap for a year. And eventually that'll, it's not sustainable, but just kind of how the game's played.
And now from then your perspective and the operation of how you are running MS Money Moves, how do you speak to that differentiation of quality, truthful quality against something that is in all sense of the word a
Right.
scam? And how do you say that objectively? How do you actually prove that point?
Well, that's one of the nice things about the market, companies like Sorrento, which in my opinion falls in that category. People, get hyped up on misinformation for a pretty long time, but eventually they have to come around and really kind of realize what's going on there. With a company like that has like 8 emergency use authorizations out for COVID and like 6 patients enrolled that amassed an over, I think it was over $4 billion market cap. Eventually people start, being like, hey, what's going on here? There's already vaccines approved and we're still trading over $2 billion. What's actually driving that? So
Why is the CEO in a Ferrari?
exactly.
He was driving a Camry last
Exactly.
week.
So really, I think our role is just trying to provide that information objectively and kind of, teach a man to fish, so to speak, and really kind of enable them to see behind that curtain and really understand the fundamental drivers of that real world success for the companies.
Now, in your industry, have you seen, Zion, what has the pandemic done to the sector?
It's
Has it done much of anything? Has it changed the FDA? What have you seen that it's changed? If we get away from just the
right,
vaccine
right.
side of things,
It's been insane. I mean, a lot of the ETFs focused on the industry immediately, went to one side of the boat to grab up all these companies that were focusing on therapeutics and test kits and this and that. And right now the industry is getting hit pretty hard because again, a lot of these companies, it was BS. They were kind of, little like distraction press releases to grab all this money from people that were entering the market with stimulus checks. So really, I think a lot of companies, capitalized on that and hopefully are able to fund their real research on the diseases and illnesses they're working on. But I think now we're kind of recovering from the pandemic back to a little more of a normal operating schedule where
was there oversaturation?
uh yeah, but I think it's kind of necessary, with how complex a lot of these indications are. You got to have a lot of companies that are getting a partial shot on goal so everyone else can figure out,
Mm.
what are the steps.
Now, did you see, before I turn it over to Alex, did you see, Tartle's a global company, and I know you follow things globally. Was there, did governments get involved? Was there a bunch of money thrown at the sector, like government money, like our World Health Organization, that type of thing? And so they were just trying to, they were following along with the hype. What did you see on that as
Yeah,
far as that?
totally. I mean, I was seeing DoD money go out to companies that, again, if you actually kind of dug in, wasn't going to be a shot on goal at all, and they should have been putting their money there. And that was happening globally. I mean, I saw a lot of money flowing from the Canadian government into US based companies that had therapeutics, which didn't really have the best efficacy profiles. But and yeah, that was definitely happening at a global scale. But now it's a lot more stringent. I know the FDA will not even really look at anything for COVID that has less than 44,000 patients. And like 8 months ago, people were freaking out about stuff where only 10 patients were involved. So we've come a long way over the last year.
Well, the way I see it with Turtle, why can't we just get all 213 of our countries involved?
Right.
The FDA be
Yeah,
drooling all
right.
over themselves. Same with every other drug administration, across the globe. So, when you talk about this macro sense, looking at these trends, Zion, how do you see this transition in the future? First, and before you get to that, before you see that transition to the future, what that future looks like, tell me from your stance of an ethical vision at your firm and personally, how you plan to carry that into the design of MS Money Moves and then transitioning that off to the individuals that actually absorb that info.
Yeah, so I think the ethical approach is the only sustainable approach, and like true ethical, drivers of success. I mean, you can focus on these companies that are pumping 300% on news that's completely unwarranted for that kind of move, but eventually the market's going to catch up to that. So I think our vision is really enabling these people to understand the consistent and fundamental success, which will exist regardless of what's going on in the world, which is a huge reason of why I'm really excited about biotech. To everyone I talk about, it's if there's a Great Depression, if we go through any kind of turmoil, we need this industry, we need these solutions, we need to be curing diseases. There's always fundamental value here, and it's really powerful if we can get people to understand that, consistent fundamental value that's added in this industry. So we're really just focused on sticking to that message, focusing on the fundamentals, and enabling people to really understand what drives this value and be able to take control of it instead of kind of going off of some random CNBC article or something they see on Motley Fool.
Sure. And you said understand multiple times. How do you then incentivize individuals, laymen, whoever it might be, to actually understand?
Right.
How do you create bridge? This is one we deal with at Turtle all the time. How do you get that value to
Yeah.
translate? So then how are you doing that? What's your approach to getting people to understand? What's the incentive, that driver
So
for that?
right now we're building out the education kind of in, coexistent with each component of the service. So we have a lot of core course content which we're building out, and to kind of incentivize that, we're looking at options of reducing the price and kind of giving people actual financial incentive to increase their literacy in the space. And I think that's really the most effective route that I've seen. When it comes down to people's wallets, they're a lot more eager to take advantage of that than other things that they aren't quite convinced on yet.
Agreed. So the more you educate yourself, you've created sort of this inverse graph. The price goes down. So as education goes up, your price goes down. So the more I learn on your platform to coexist with whatever that subscription I have, it's actually going to incentivize me to continue to learn more. So I pay less for that
Yeah,
information,
yeah, that's
essentially.
what we're playing with. And to us as a business, there's some benefit in that because, a more educated subscriber typically produces a lot more lifetime value and is going to be a lot more sticky than someone that
Mhm.
just came around for a week to, try to make 500% or something like that. So it's a much more sustainable and meaningful value for our bottom line and theirs.
I love, yeah, not
Yeah,
treating
and
them as a
and I
labor statistic.
I know like Motley Fool has a subscription base, and I don't know if you've used them as a model or not. What are some of the differences between you and like one of their, because they'll have like $99 subscription
Yeah.
bases and stuff like that. And I know you've seen and looked into them. What would be the difference between the
Yeah,
two?
so they don't go as deep as us, and with that, a lot of their analysts aren't really as well educated and don't have the same experience level as a lot of the people we work with, which oftentimes results in some lofty price targets and some picks that don't quite hit for their customers. And the issue with that model is, they can go back and be like, hey, we called Amazon 10 years ago, but what else did they pick? There's for every, 500%
Mm.
runner.
Sounds like Alex Jones. I was right about this article,
Right.
but you talked about 10,000 articles. I'm glad you hit
Exactly.
one.
Anyone can call out if they look at like 50 stocks and say, "Hey, these are all going to go to the moon." One of them's going to hit. That's just kind of the nature of this industry. So we
Right.
really focus on not overwhelming people with, thousands of different stocks and just focusing in on what we call our core positions. Here's like the 5 to 10 stocks that are really fundamentally sound. We provide that updated research. We stay really consistent on the story, and on more of a kind of one-off basis, we have way more communicative capabilities, such as our in-chat function, where the whole community is able to kind of engage with each other, better understand the investment, and work with us to really kind of understand the value and where their money is safest according to the data.
So besides educating, are you trying to create a community too? Is that what
Yeah,
I'm hearing?
that's another pillar we're focusing on. We're kind of looking at another kind of sister business that would be a little bit of a StockTwits competitor, but more coming on that soon.
We get those people to monetize that data on Turtle.
Yeah, it would be
Exactly.
awesome.
Snap.
So, Zion, what is, because I know Alex kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you kind of let people know, like how could they sign up? What's your website? If they're interested in investing, like what type of ideal customer are you looking for? Who would be happy signing up? That could you kind of give that
Yeah.
information?
So our site's msmoneymoves.com, and really we have a pretty wide array of subscribers, all the way from people that have multi-million dollar positions on single companies to people who have like $1,000 and are trying to get into investing. So we really try to help everyone out. Um, I'd say our kind of ideal subscriber is someone that is interested in the market and is really willing to put in the time and do their homework to understand this. We do our best to, give as much time savings to our subscribers as possible, but it still is necessary that people read our content and really kind of do the work to understand, the data that we're sharing with them. So someone that has, a little bit of drive to understand this and is eager to, yeah, make a killing in the biotech market.
No, I think that's amazing. And so I always like visions of the future. So if you had to give me a daydream right now of how you see the earth, people investing, whatever it might be, tell me what that future looks like. I want you to essentially share that vision as descriptively if you can with the world, so that when they look at what you're doing here, supporting your business, supporting themselves, that it is another one of those things that will accrue towards leaders like yourself actually trying to help create that world for the benefit of those people
Right. I
supporting.
think in the ultimate future, we'd, as a collective society, focus on fundamentals in everything, politics, investing, no matter what it is. I think fundamentals are really what drives humanity and real progress. And really focusing in on those fundamentals, specifically in the investment space, will yield less scam companies and less wasted capital that could be focused in on things that are really improving the world and yielding the stuff we all want to see, like having trains in the US, for example. Um, something that really angers me.
Oh, it's so obvious. Yeah, maglev the damn thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, stuff like that. I think if we, as a collective society, can really focus in on those fundamentals, it will enable us to have conviction to really focus in on the things that are driving real value for our communities, which I think is, what we need to be doing.
No, I think that's amazing. Well, Zion, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for listening to our questions, answering them, articulating on them properly. We are happy to have you here to champion what you are doing, especially because it's that education, ethical, data first approach to really create that better world and truly democratize something outside of the buzzword, but actually look at that definition and say, this is what we want for the
It's the only
betterment of
way to
all.
do it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Zion.
Appreciate it.